Update. My brother framed me of SA 8 years ago to get with my girlfriend. Now that the truth is out, everyone wants to reconcile. I was basically kicked out from their house and told that neither Jenny nor the kids would be returning and my father would be coming over to take their stuff to my apartment. When my father came, I begged and pleaded, but he basically packed a couple of bags and told me never ever to contact them again and that he would personally hand me to the cops if that happened. By evening, Henry had shared the screenshots and all the details to our extended family group on WhatsApp, from where I was unanimously kicked out. The next few days, I even had people from my friend group calling me to say they were disgusted with me and never to contact them again. I was a mess during that time. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't even properly work. My boss also heard the rumors going around but couldn't do much until he saw some police action against me. He advised me that I leave the organization on my own to keep my record intact and that he would ensure that I don't have to even serve my notice period. I tried to argue the case, but he told me that if the cops come knocking on my door, he would be kicked out anyways, and in such a scenario and the gravity of the case meant I won't get severance and my record will be tarnished. I grudgingly agreed to his ask and I left the organization in the next few days. In mid-August, while I was still wallowing in my misery, I received 2 documents from the court. One was a letter of disownment and the other were divorce papers. I was quite drunk, but I went to my parents' place anyways, only for my brother to come and beat me up and tell me that I was disgrace to the family and it was good that I was disowned. I had blood coming out of my face by the time he was done with me and barely able to stand. My parents and my wife looked at me from afar but did nothing. I managed to get myself up after some time, a crying mess, and realized that I had lost everything and everyone I knew. I stayed holed up in my apartment for the duration of the divorce. It went as amicably as it could. As I was jobless, plus my now ex-parents stated they would pay for the child, I didn't have to pay child support or any alimony. By January 2016 I was divorced, but trying to pick up the pieces that was once my life was hard. During this time, I also felt like confronting Amanda, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized it could have made matters worse for me due to the women-centric laws in my country meant one phone call and I would be looking at 5 to 6 years in jail. In February 2016, I got into a major accident and spent a good part of 5 weeks in recovery. The staff told me that they contacted my emergency number, which was still Jenny at that point, and she hung up and no one showed. Once I recovered, I realized that I had spent through a good part of my savings and I needed to get back on my feet, if not for anything else, to have a roof over my head. However, I realized that I won't be able to do anything in the place I was at. So sold all my furniture, paid my remaining dues for the rented accommodation and decided to start from scratch in a different place. I moved to a city 2 hours away and tried to get a job, for some time but to no avail. For 4 months, this went by, after which I ran into an old acquaintance, James from college. He was the quiet kid during that time and didn't really talk to anyone, but seeing him after so many years was odd as he spotted me out from the crowd and called my name. We greeted each other and talked about our lives for a bit. I told him I was in the city looking for a job. He told me he had just quit and was planning on setting up a management consulting firm of his own. He then invited me to a drink later on, where after a lot of talking about our professional lives he offered me an opportunity to work with him as he needed a couple of people who knew their stuff. At this point I thought I needed to work a lot off to get my mind off these thoughts. So I agreed, but I told him I want to meet him and his team and talk to them before we moved forward. 2 days later, he introduced me to another guy, Derek, and told me that currently it will be just the 3 of us going forward. I shook hands with Derek and told them that before they proceeded further, I had something to say. I then proceeded to spill the beans on everything that had happened to me during that time and how I was disowned and divorced because of it, with the tears coming through in between. James and Derek told me that they felt sorry for me, but also told me that if there was no criminal record on my person, then there would be no issue. I stated that police never came to my house, and they were relieved. James did mention that to be on the safer side, he's going to ask someone to run a full background check, and I understood his position and agreed. During this time I was living in a run-down place that I rented to minimize my expenses. I waited patiently for 2 weeks but was still looking for jobs in other places in case things didn't work out. 2 weeks later, James called me and we met up later that day. He stated my record is clean of any SA, and welcomed me to the team. After that I threw myself to my work and started therapy sessions. On the advice of Derek, I also joined a gym and vented a lot of my frustration on the punching bag and went from an average 70 kilograms to a buff 98 kilograms. Derek and I became gym brothers and I basically looked at him as an older brother as he was essentially Henry's age. By end of 2018, I had a good amount of control back in my life, the consulting firm took off and the money rolled in. I rented out a nice apartment in a decent neighborhood. The Band-Aid also came off to an extent, and I realized I needed to do some necessary steps to move on. I went to a court horse and changed my last name officially on record. I adopted the last name of Derek after his and parents go ahead. They saw me as a nice guy and involved me in a lot of their family functions, including me being the best man for Derek's wedding, so this was a way of thanking them as well.